Welcome, 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 and thank you for joining us on another episode of today's Electrical Estimating. I'm your co-host, Chris Trommer, and as always, I'm joined by my other co-host, Sal Huerta.
Hello, everyone.
Sal, today we will be continuing on with the second part of our series with Matt Firestone. First part, we talked about people. This one is about processes. And I think Matt does a great job of speaking to a large audience because he talks about owner operators all the way up to hundreds of millions of dollar large corporations and really what processes do for you, where they should be in place, and sort of how they should be in place. I've been worked for some companies that they've micromanaged. Every process you had to follow A, B, C, D, E, no creativity, no nothing. It was follow every single step. And I hated it. I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I thought it was, I don't know about your life experiences, but I like the way Matt puts it down as more of a guardrail system, helping to get people from A to D. But here's your guardrails. Use your own creativity, your own insight and thought process to get there.
Well, just like you mentioned, there are a lot of companies who want you to follow their roadmap. If this has been successful for them, this is how we do things, and so forth. And then, like you also mentioned, that other companies now they're using it as a checklist. They want your creativity. They want you to be a part of the process. They want you to problem solve while you're there, but checking off this list. I did A, I did B, I did C, kind of thing, and then allow you to have the leeway in between. In some instances, both work. You can't knock the final result. But the whole point here is that there should be something in place for someone to be able to easily follow and not get lost in the process.
Exactly. So, without any more time wasted, let these folks get into this episode, and I'll catch you next week, Sal. Step one with you guys was people that we were discussing. Step two, or I guess pillar number two, what was that again?
The processes. So coming up with those, I guess the common term is the standing operating procedure. How are we creating that consistency that regardless of the type or size of project, and, again, in the case of estimating, the type or size of project that we're bidding, everybody's going to do it in a very similar fashion. Now, we're not talking a step-by-step guide of these are exactly the steps you take, because we know that even though we might only be bidding McDonald's or, I don't know, name your favorite chain, that there's going to be variables on each of those projects. Different things with the site, different things with the project, different things with our workforce, that we need to create lanes that we can operate within, but we still need to hire the people that can do that problem solving, find those uniquenesses to the project, but know the milestones so that if we know we have 2 weeks to bid this job, what are the things we need to do and back up to today so I know what I need to do today versus if I have a week to do this job, they're still the same steps. If it's a $5,000 job or a $5 million job, I can get through those steps quicker on a smaller job than I might be able to on a larger job. But having those standard operating procedures in place, I think it really opened people's eyes during COVID when we had people that were working remotely, so we couldn't just walk down the hallway and ask someone a question. We had people that were unfortunately getting sick and out of the office for extended periods of time. Without having that consistency, it makes it real hard to have that confidence level in the bids. Everybody's doing it a little bit different. Well, does Steve do it this way? Does Joe do it this way? From a manager standpoint, where can we find efficiencies? Where can we maybe cut a little bit of cost out to be more competitive on that price? So that's really what we're trying to focus on is how do we create those lanes, create the steps that everybody understands their accountability, understands the milestones that need to take place, who's responsible in each of those different stages of it, so that as we get more and more work on our plate, it's easier to pass that off onto somebody else. If heaven forbid something happens to one of our estimators, we can then get that to somebody else to get the estimate completed and really not have that level of uncertainty with it.
Now, do you feel like these processes should be rigid to where It's, hey, you got to follow exactly within these lines? Or do you think it's more of setting sort of what you said, milestones within the processes and leaving some creativity and problem solving to the individual person, but saying, hey, you can operate in these sort of wider lanes, but we all need to understand that this is step one and step two. But what you do in between, there's sort of your own creativity.
Very much so, and that's where it if we're hiring the right people, goes back to pillar number one, we're hiring the people that we trust with this process, but we're giving them the guidelines to get from point A to point B, but I don't worry so much about are they going to drive the car, ride their motorcycle, or walk. How they get there is going to be a little bit different, but we want to make sure we're still getting to the same destination, but we know that there might be a detour, there might be some bumps in the road, something comes up that's different. They have to have the flexibility to be able to solve that problem for that project versus, well, the checklist said I need to do this
Yeah.
and I don't have an alternative, so I don't know what to do. So they either stop or they make the incorrect choice. That it's providing the more of the guidance of how do we get there as opposed to the turn by turn GPS directions.
Before, when we were talking about people, you mentioned working with, smaller companies with owner operator kind of that are doing the estimating. Do you feel like they should, from day one, even if there's one estimator working for their company, put into place sort of procedures so that they're there from the beginning so that they have something to build from, even though it's one person that's handling it, instead of just saying, hey, go do what you do and you'll get it to us? Should they be saying, hey, this is sort of our structure, even if I'm the owner doing the estimating myself, say, this is how I'm going to do it, so that when I hire somebody, there's the groundwork of how I've done it and I can easily pass it along to that particular person?
For sure. And it's so much easier to start those processes at a smaller scale and then tweak them and scale them as your company grows. That if you want things done a specific way, because what's most likely going to happen if we don't have that process in place and we want it done a certain way, we hire somebody when we get busy, well, then they're going to create the process the way that works best for them, maybe not best for the company, but best for them. And then all of a sudden, that owner has lost sight of that and lost control of that, where it may not be as detailed of a process that they outline when it's them, but they could at least get the core of it put together. And then as they hire that new estimator, work with that individual to tweak the individual steps in that process to still align with what the owner wants. But now we have something when we hire estimator number one that they can follow, estimator number two can follow when we hire them, or if we're jumping back in and out of that, making sure that everybody's still on the same page.
So it really doesn't matter the size of your company at this point, small, large, because I feel like if I was a smaller company, I might be looking at other things within there that I might be doing since I'm wearing multiple hats to say, hey, I don't need to write down what I do for my process here because I'm the one doing it. But it taking the time to just jot down maybe a page or so of how you do it so that you can reference it in the future and pass it along and have it there seems like it's quite important.
Chris, I would say yes. That would be my thought on that. And if you're not a writer and don't want to take the time to jot it all down on a piece of paper, I mean, there's great tools that we have available. We can do an audio recording on our cell phone. We can do a bullet point list. There's so many things out there that there isn't a reason we can't do that. And even go into other aspects of your business, things with accounting and project closeout. They're not the things we're doing every day, but if there's certain steps to file quarterly tax forms or new hire steps so we don't forget something in that, creating those checklists so that when we are wearing all these different hats and we're jumping in from role to role, we don't forget ourselves. I know I have a lot of things in my mind, but that's where I run into problems when I'm trying to juggle too many things and you miss those little details in the process. And it seems to me that the ones that you miss are the more expensive ones than the less expensive that wouldn't have been as big of a deal. So trying to have those processes, those checklists, even if you are the electrician, the estimator, the project manager, and the owner of the company, it's going to make it that much easier as you grow and scale to create that consistency and allow you to truly be, I don't want to say hands off, but allow you to focus on those high value tasks of operating the business instead of being so deep in the weeds of answering everybody's questions of how do I do this? And they're always coming to you for the answers versus figuring out the answers themselves and coming to you to acknowledge that they have the right answer or maybe tweak it a little bit to get it back on course.